One Israel Fund, beating to the rhythm of the heartland, enhancing and securing daily life in the Jewish communities of Judea and Samaria for over 25 years. Join us and make a difference.
Good morning or good evening, depending upon where in the world you are tuning in from. I am Scott Feldman, Executive Vice President of One Israel Fund, and I am delighted to welcome you to another fantastic installment brought to you by our virtual series of events. Today's program, billed as a conversation with former Defense Minister and head of the Yamina Party, member of Knesset Naftali Bennett, with our very own Director of Tourism, Eve Harow, is sponsored by our esteemed trustees in memory of their colleague and our dear friend, Stanley Rosenberg, Zichron Livracha, of blessed memory. Stanley, an integral component of One Israel Fund for more than 2 decades, was also a trustee until his passing a little more than a month ago. We wish his wife Judy and the entire family our sincere condolences during this difficult time. If you would like to become a sponsor of a virtual event in the future, please visit our website, oneisraelfund.org, or send an email to me at scott@oneisraelfund.org, the same email in your confirmation for today's webinar. We have tried with today's event, as well as our past presentations, to bring you some of the leaders of policy in Israel today. One Israel Fund, as a nonprofit in the United States, does not endorse any politicians or political parties. We merely present today's webinar as an opportunity for all of us, myself included, to hear from one of the most dynamic and influential individuals in Israel today. And the fact that Naftali has always been a dear friend to One Israel Fund and the cause of helping the Jewish communities of Judea and Samaria just makes it that much more meaningful to all of us. I also urge you to visit our website, again, oneisraelfund.org, or our social media pages for past virtual events, as well as information about the myriad projects One Israel Fund is involved with, from education to preventive security, to medical, religious, and all areas of social welfare in Israel's heartland. I hope you will choose to become a partner in our vital work. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure and a distinct honor for all of us in One Israel Fund to welcome the former Defense Minister and head of the Yamina Party, Naftali Bennett, and our very own, and quite incredible, I might add, Eve Harow. Eve, the show is now yours.
Hi, everybody. Where is Naftali?
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
Hi. We can't see you. There you go.
There I go.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know what an insanely crazy schedule you have. So we're going to jump right into the questions. And here we go. It's not starting with an easy one. When your parents moved to Israel, just after
Eve, if I may, I just want to say how much I appreciate the fund and how much, as former defense minister of Israel, I can vouch for the effectiveness of the One Israel Fund in helping secure lives and protect lives of Israelis, 500,000 Israelis living in Judea and Samaria. So, and simply put, these guys are amazing, and anyone who could help, I'd certainly urge to help out with these great folks. Eve,
all right, you heard that, everybody. When the former defense minister gives kudos to One Israel Fund, better than that we cannot do. All right, but we've got some pretty interesting questions for you tonight that have been sent in the last few days. We're not going to be taking questions live. The questions are already set up. When your parents moved to Israel just after the Six-Day War, and when I moved with my young family in the 1980s, we were motivated by Zionism and the desire to contribute to the Jewish state. You have exemplified this in your life, from IDF Army service and some seriously elite combat units, to a successful high-tech career in the private sector, and now as a public servant in, I would imagine, a not so pleasant political arena. The next Aliya, though, may be of those more motivated to escape growing anti-Semitism, street violence, and economic uncertainty. So to focus in on the question, you were Minister of Diaspora Affairs for a few years, so you know that this potential Western Aliya will not be willing to go to, let's say, the Mabarot, the tent camps, as did the Jews of the Arab world in North Africa who were expelled in the early years of our state, and also will not take temporary menial jobs, as did the brilliant scientists and musicians who came from the former Soviet Union until they really powered up our startup nation. And of course, now we have world-class philharmonics. So we want to be a haven for all Jews, but do we on both sides need to be a little more realistic? And I ask this, and I know it's a complicated question, but I ask this as an Israeli mother whose own hardworking adult children struggle to afford homes in a market where we don't have enough housing. I'm now unemployed, as are a good 20 to 25% Israelis. So are we ready for an Aliyah? Do we have enough housing and jobs, classrooms and medical facilities? What is your opinion on this?
Yeah, Eve, certainly that's a very, very good point. I'll start with the bottom line. Yes. The bottom line is yes, and we're up for the challenge. And I think not only are we up for the challenge, I think this needs to be a huge focus of the government. First of all, because it's what we're all about. That's our mission. It's an axiom from my perspective. I don't need to explain. When any Jew in the world is in distress, we're always here for him or her. And if they want to make Aliyah, and we certainly would, love everyone to make Aliyah, we'll work it out. But more specifically, I spent a decade of my life in the Israel high-tech scene. I founded a startup. We're talking about a relatively high quality, everyone's great, but highly educated, let's put it that way, potential Aliyah from North America. The coming to Israel and joining the high-tech arena, there's no limits. Certainly these days, everything happens remotely, so it doesn't really matter if we're holding this Zoom from New Jersey or from Jerusalem, where I'm speaking right now. So there's a unlimited capacity of growth for the state of Israel. But Israel's economy, barring the COVID-19, which we can allude to later, Israel's economy is looking great. We're on a very good trajectory with a real economy. We're the highest ratio of high-tech per export in the world. 50% of our export is high technology. And, if you think of it, the over the past 100 years, the most important resource in the world was energy, was oil. For the next 100 years, the most scarce and important resource is human talent. And that's what we happen to have. We're a very entrepreneurial people. And as long as the government doesn't ruin it, and it's not been ruining it, I'm a very critical guy, but I can tell you the government has not harmed in any way the high-tech sector up till now. And I think we're sort of going to ensure that we don't harm that. It's limitless. So especially for the younger generation, the future, I think, is immensely bright here. And we're morphing from just information technology and fintech into so many areas, medical technology, biotechnology, and everything having to do with design. So Israel has become a real powerhouse. I've been in the high-tech, for 20 years. It's a whole different ballgame. And back then we were doing great. Now, much better. So the answer is yes. In terms of housing, it'll be a challenge. We have to open up the cork. There's sort of something stopping. We have to free up. We've got so much of Israel's land is owned by the state of Israel, and we just have to release it for the best bidders. That's doable and it's solvable.
And how about in terms of, let's say, medical care? One of the things that Israel, thank God, we were able to cope with the COVID, and we'll talk about that in a minute and your role in that. But it's been an open secret for a long time for any Israeli that we were right there, with the health funds and with the hospitals, not enough beds, not enough doctors, not enough positions for doctors. Many of the potential Aliyah, in addition to being in high tech, and also I would say from North America, but also from France and from other places, are in the medical field. So is that something are there plans for this? Are there actual plans, let's say, to expand the hospitals, to expand classrooms, to expand the capabilities for jobs for sure high tech, and I would say, you know, whoever can should be studying engineering now. My understanding is we're a bottomless pit for any kind of engineering whatsoever. But in the other spheres, are there plans to do that? Are there actually plans, what they call in Hebrew, Tochnit Megera, like something in the drawer?
So I'll there's two aspects. One, I want to just spend a half a minute. The medical care for the citizens of Israel, there's universal medical insurance. So no one in Israel will ever, you know, be declined at a hospital for any treatment, by the way. Not only basic initial treatment, but every Israeli gets full medical care and fairly good medical care. And the good news, it happens to be that relatively to the rest of the world, very efficient and good healthcare. Yes, it's underfunded, but the good news is when you've got a very efficient machine and you pour in more money, you'll get a lot more effect. We spend per capita much less than the United States, and I lived in the States for 5 years. The healthcare here is just as good. Yeah, we need to spend a bit more, but it's a good machine. Now, post-COVID, we're going to relax many of the requirements to adapt and recognize, you know, diplomas from abroad, et cetera, and have a fairly short process of becoming Israeli doctor, Israeli, you know, optician or whatever.
Okay, so that's still an option. All right. So since we've been talking about COVID, you initiated a campaign at the very beginning when you were a defense minister and you were also dealing with a pandemic, where you said to people, in order to save Saba and Savta, in order to save your grandparents, don't go see them. I forgot what the exact wording was. Are you aware of the global impact that you had with that comment? It wasn't just picked up by Israel. It was picked up around the world. When you said that, were you aware of what was going to go? Was that what was going to happen with that?
Well, it was a very early stage in the pandemia, and there was general fear, and people viewed the virus as treating everyone equal, but it doesn't. And when the data from Wuhan came in, when the data came in from Italy, and that was already a second confirmation, I realized very early on that it's a discriminatory virus. It kills the elder and it doesn't kill the younger people. Now, obviously, you know,
there are exceptions, yeah,
right, and in big numbers, and then what I seek to do is divorce the graph of COVID cases, which in and itself is not a very negative thing, with the graph of COVID respiratory patients and deaths. And that's what we really care about. And the single most effective way is to separate and protect the 60 and higher population. So yeah, what had happened, I'll tell you the story behind the scenes. You know, I realized this and I recorded a WhatsApp message to my mom and my family. And they said, what? Wow, this is really important. And then I realized, man, I'm Minister of Defense of the State of Israel. Everyone deserves this. So it was 2 a.m. I recorded a message on WhatsApp, the same message that I had to my family half an hour earlier, but a generic one. And I think, and I just sent it through the WhatsApp, and every Israeli got it like 17 times.
Yeah.
So Israel was the first to realize that we have to divorce or stay away from grandma and grandpa, and we called it the grandma operation. And then I recorded a YouTube in English with the same message, and it hit all around the world, in Brazil, in Argentina, in New York, in Switzerland, in Holland. The queen, I think, or the king said he told his mom. It took over the world. And that's something that we could do. And I think it saved potentially thousands of lives. It's great.
Well, now in hindsight, we know how much the nursing homes, the rest homes in Israel and around the world, where the care wasn't initially taken to protect them or to distance from them, and how many people lost their lives, some of the older people, because of that. So it had a tremendous impact. And as someone who knows your mother, so I'm delighted that she was your guinea pig, that what worked for your family ended up working for everybody. So you were defense minister when this pandemic hit, and I want to ask you some questions about that time period. Despite the fact that Benny Gantz has already overturned what you received a lot of positive feedback for is not giving terrorists and their families money, do you feel that you made a lasting impact on the defense ministry? Because there are those who will say that it doesn't matter who the defense minister is. We've had 4 defense ministers in the last 4 years. There's a certain role that you're going to have to play. There's certain things that are going to happen with Gaza and money to Hamas and whatever it is that you're not going to have a choice in doing. It's a very politicized job. Do you think that that's true? And do you think that during your too short stint as defense minister, you were able to make a lasting impact?
First of all, I hope to be back fairly soon. And I have to admit, it was extremely rewarding, service to my country, and as someone who served in the Sayeret Matkal unit as a soldier, and later on as a platoon commander, a company commander, in all of the wars over the past 25 years, it was very meaningful for me to become the defense minister and bring new, fresh thoughts. I think Netanyahu has done a lot of good stuff for the state of Israel. I come from a younger generation with new views and new thoughts on various things. So I'd say there's 3 elements which I managed, I hope, to put on a track that is continuing to some degree even afterwards. First and foremost, vis-a-vis Iran, I call it the octopus doctrine. Iran, which sits about 1,000 kilometers east of Israel with no common borders, it has a very clever strategy. They envelope Israel with their arms, their tentacles, and try to suffocate us with sort of a ring of rockets, hundreds of thousands of rockets all around Israel, and then start dripping them on Israeli population centers. So in Lebanon via Hezbollah, Iran funds about 80%. In Gaza with Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, etc. My strategy was to stop fighting, to not waste resources as much as possible on not fighting Hezbollah directly and Hamas directly, but go for the jugular. Go get Iran. Go attack them, which we've been doing, weaken them, put them under pressure and stress economically, diplomatically, and militarily, and also covert in other dimensions. I read in the newspaper that Bandar Abbas port was attacked, cyber. So, those sort of things. And we need to go for the jugular. We need to go to the head, and it's working. This notion of, instead of fighting the fingernails, the fingertips of the octopus, and then bleeding our boys in Lebanon and in Gaza, we go fight the mullahs in Tehran or on their way. So we multiplied the pace of attacks on Iranian soldiers threefold, 300% in the last quarter. And Iran is on the defense, and in fighting terror, you're either attacking or getting attacked. The second thing is hunting down terrorists and through their wallets. I'm a big believer that you need to dry up the money, and money is the huge incentive of terror, even more than ideology. So I put in a series of actions that effectively delayed and even stopped the terror, the blood money that the Palestinian Authority provides every year. They provide 1.3 billion shekel. That's about $300 million a year to the terrorists. Here, unfortunately, the Gantz has reversed some of my policies. I'm being very vocal about that. I think it's a huge mistake. And finally, the COVID-19, where I basically hijacked the army, the military, and the Ministry of Defense to become the central operational center of fighting the corona, and we did a very good job. We've basically succeeded to a fairly good degree.
You also had a very original idea of taking some hotels and turning them into corona hotels for people who were sick, couldn't be quarantined at home because then they would make the rest of their family sick. So they would go into these hotels, and Israel paid for them to be there, to get food. It wasn't the greatest situation, but at least, although I did hear that there were some party hotels, so who knows? You know, I know of one couple that met in a hotel that's already getting married. So maybe they should definitely invite you to the wedding. So that was an original action that you took, that also, like, thinking out of the box. And of course, some of the most poignant pictures that we saw in the last few weeks were soldiers delivering packages to people's homes in Bnei Brak and in other areas. And it was really a sense of taking a crisis and perhaps bridging some gaps in Israeli society, and people who ordinarily never would have met did meet and see the other, and it was a bright spot in what were definitely a few very, very difficult weeks. Okay, so next question. Many people may not be aware that you were once the head of the Yesha Council, which is when I met you many years ago, the umbrella council for the settlements in Judea and Samaria. So this purported deal of the century is worrying the council. They've been very vocal about it, and many others as well, as I'm sure many of the listeners to this webinar are also quite concerned. Are you concerned that we are about to greenlight a Palestinian state? And in general, what's your opinion on Israel applying sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, and the Trump plan, or the deal of the century in particular? Because I know a lot of people are quite concerned about where this is going.
So yeah, really the devil is in the details. About a decade ago, I was the first guy in Israel to bring forth the sovereignty plan. It was in the very dark abyss of the Bar Ilan plan and the Palestinian state. And I came in and said, no, not only are we against the Palestinian state, we have to put something forward. And I put forward a plan of applying sovereignty on 60% of Judea and Samaria, which is Area C, effectively all the Israeli areas. And initially it was dismissed as a crazy idea, and now we've made tremendous progress, everyone together, and it's very satisfying. Now, definitely we need to move forward with sovereignty, but as I said, the devil is in the details. Right. If the sovereignty is coupled with any sort of commitment of Israel to recognize a Palestinian state, then no. We'll continue what we did for the past 50 years. We'll get 2 million Israelis into Judea and Samaria, and we'll be fine. So we have to decouple these elements, and we have to prevent freezing any Jewish building. So there's a few things we need to do, but definitely we need to push. And I think it's more an Israeli issue than an international issue. I know, President Trump certainly has been a huge friend to Israel, no doubt. At the end of the day, applying sovereignty is an Israeli decision. Menachem Begin applied sovereignty on the Golan Heights against the will of the United States, which was a huge friend, but was very angry. But later on, America recognized the Golan Heights. We have to do what's right, and what's right, what's moral, what's Jewish, and that certainly is applying sovereignty. So I would be profoundly disappointed if this whole thing ends with some minuscule sovereignty, say on one town like Ma'ale Adumim, That would be a huge disappointment after all the, expectations that the Prime Minister has set. But under no circumstances can we agree to a Palestinian state.
So just to make sure that I understand, you think we should put sovereignty on as much as we can, 32%, 60%, somewhere in the middle of the areas that Israel already controls, but not agree to the plan, deal of the century, whatever you want to call it, if it means that Israel is recognizing that there will be a Palestinian state on what we don't apply sovereignty to. And you think, if I understood you correctly, that the United States will be all right with that, and the Europeans will be all right with that, or it doesn't matter?
Look, when we talk about sovereignty, this is a decision for generations.
Yes.
I can't recall the last time America applied sovereignty. Was it Alaska, Louisiana, or Hawaii? I can't remember. Talking about a long time ago. I don't think it even happened in the 20th century, perhaps in the 19th century. So when was the last time that the United Kingdom applied sovereignty on a new territory? Changing borders is a huge thing for generations, for eternity. So I would not ignore what the international community says. I would take it into account, but I would put it into perspective because everyone's really busy with their own stuff. Everyone's got their plate filled with the corona, with a tanking economy, with illegal immigrants, whatever. Every country's got its own stuff. So the view that everyone wakes up in the morning thinking whether Israel will apply sovereignty on Gush Etzion and Karmei Tzur, it's pretty ridiculous. Who cares? So we need to do what's right for us. And definitely what's right for us is applying sovereignty, and certainly without a Palestinian state.
Should you think that this present government in its formation can do that, will do that?
I don't see the spinal cord in this government. I don't see the determination to do it. You have left-wing folks, good people. Benny Gantz is not a bad person. Gabi Ashkenazi, but they're no different than they hold the same views as Tzipi Livni and Olmert vis-a-vis a Palestinian state. And regarding Netanyahu, we need to push, and we'll push.
I have no doubt that you will. What's so ironic is that, and I'm not sure that our international listeners know, that one of the Israeli journalists, Tzvi Yechezkeli, came out with, he had taken a camera with him around Judea and Samaria, interviewing the Arabs here. And not one of them that he found wanted there to be a Palestinian state. They all prefer to live under Israel. And even with the editorials coming from the UAE and other places, it's a pretty open secret that the Arab world is moving towards Israel, understands the benefits of a strong relationship with Israel, and that things are changing. And the people who are still talking about a two-state solution perhaps aren't looking at what the people here want.
It's nuts.
We see that.
A Palestinian state is, these guys are so corrupt, so terror-ridden. I wouldn't let them run a grocery store. These folks are just the current leaders of, and it's been haunting them for 100 years. The Arabs living in Judea and Samaria, they mostly hold a municipal identity, a clan identity of Nablus, of Ramallah, and trying to sort of create this artificial Palestinian state is ridiculous. It's trying to enforce Western thought on the Arab world, and it doesn't work. Look at it. The only countries which survived the Arab Spring or Muslim winter are really the kingdoms. the Kingdom of Morocco, the Kingdom of Jordan, but the other countries just went through a series of a mess, an ongoing mess. So why would we want to import that into the heart of Israel? And you know, there's about 300 million Arabs and Muslims. They've got 23 states, I think, in the last count. We've got one small state. We're not about to give up 1 centimeter. I will be vehemently against. I'll do everything to prevent giving up 1 centimeter of land of the state of Israel. It's our land. We respect the Arabs. We'll afford them all the respect and dignity that anyone deserves. But I'm not giving up land to anyone.
So apropos that, you and Bezalel Smotrich, your co-Yamina MK, were in the Negev this week and discussing the issues that we have with some of the Israeli Arabs, those who are already Israeli citizens, who have, in a very lawless manner, taken over good sections of what is officially the state of Israel. It's not even Judea and Samaria. The Negev has been part of Israel since 1948. How do you see dealing with that issue?
Yeah, we've got something of a time bomb in the Negev with the Bedouin. First of all, I want to be clear, the Bedouin are citizens of Israel and they enjoy full equal rights as they ought to. Israel is a democracy and you can vote and be elected regardless of your race or gender or whatever. The Bedouin, though, have been afforded for many, many years the ability to marry multiple wives. So we've got polygamy, which is crazy. We've got husbands importing wives from Palestinian areas, from Gaza, and giving birth to 10 kids. And then we've got a surge of crime in the Negev. And we need to take care of this by providing them good services, good education, etc., but also being very tough on law and order. It's part and parcel of Israel. And, you know, the current government has handed the responsibility to Amir Peretz of the Labor Party, which I think he has very different views from me. So I'm not very optimistic. We're going to have to take care of this, and we will. Once we get back to government, potentially when I'll lead this country, we'll take care of it.
So until that day, and right now you're sitting in the opposition. So a couple of questions about that. Are there things that you can do in the opposition? For example, being able to say things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to say if there's what we call mishmat siatit, like coalition discipline, I suppose was the way of translating that, if you're sitting within the coalition. So are there certain freedoms that you might have in opposition that you wouldn't have otherwise? And also, a lot of the people, many of the people in the national camp are not happy that you're in the opposition, clearly, and would have liked to see you involved in the government. When you look back at some of the decisions that were made in the last year, would you have done something differently? Do you think it could have been different and that you wouldn't be sitting in opposition right now? And then again, to get back to that, but if you're already in the opposition, does it give you some freedoms that you wouldn't have had otherwise that you're going to take advantage of now?
So first of all, you know, Bibi dumped us. We were in an alliance, and he reneged the last moment, and it's disappointing. But he tore apart the right-wing bloc, and it no longer exists. That's unfortunate, but I'm not going to whine. My dad, may rest in peace, always taught me to get up and move on. There's tremendous freedom in the opposition because primarily what you can do is speak up. There's not much else you can do. Clearly, I prefer, you know, doing. I'm a doing guy in the high tech and the military as a Minister of Education, Minister of Economy, Minister of Defense. I like doing stuff, but I feel that the government is leading us the wrong way. So in that sense, I'm happy we're in opposition and pressuring Netanyahu to go to the right direction. So there's a lot of freedom, and I'm going to make good use of it.
Okay, so I know that you have to go back to the plenum in about 5 minutes. I think a lot of people don't understand that members of Knesset work very, very hard. If you're in the coalition and if you're in the opposition, there are many committees, there are many things going on. I've been in the Knesset, and there was this idea that everybody's just kind of pulling a salary and has a fancy office, and that is so not true. I know how hard all of you work. There till late at night, there early in the morning. And really, the public servants, no matter where on the political spectrum people sit, and that's something that I don't think enough people know about, and I want to mention that. Since right now you're not a minister, you're an MK, but a member of Knesset, but I know that you have a lot to do. But in the couple of minutes that are remaining, I wanted to ask you, if I may, a slightly more personal question, something that I think reflects Israel or Jewish society in Israel in a way that perhaps people living in Jewish communities outside of Israel are not familiar with. So you yourself wear a kippah, which is kind of a symbol of a certain way of life. There it is. Everyone always wants to know how you keep it on your head. You don't have to tell the secret here, but if you want to, there's just a few people listening. Which means on Shabbat, unless it's an emergency for 25 hours, your phone is off. It's a different way of life, kashrut, kosher food, etc. But in interviews that you've given before, so I'm not blowing anything out of the water, your wife has a different worldview, and you have 4 children, which, by the way, is way over the average in the world. Israel has the highest birth rate in the Western world, and that's not just coming from so-called religious families, but from Israelis. We love children. We believe in a future. It's an amazing country to raise a family. It really is. And you yourself have done that. So how does that work, though, at home? And is that kind of life where you're not necessarily on the same page? How do you raise your children? You were education minister for a few years as well. What educational stream do you send the kids to? What messages do they get? And because you are far from the only Israeli family that has a situation like this, and how have you made that work in the few hours that you're actually home? Thank goodness for Shabbat.
So, yeah, it's a good question. My wife, Gilat, first of all, I have to boast, she was a pastry chef in New York City at some of the best restaurants there, Muse and others. Yeah, she's from a secular family, and it's easy. I didn't think it would be so easy, but you know, when we were going out for about a year or so, starting to talk about marriage, and I said, "How's it going to work?" And she said, "Listen, if we respect each other, everything will work out." And now, 20 years later, 21 years later, it's working out wonderfully. We keep Shabbat and kashrut, and which I just think Shabbat is a huge gift. Anyone who doesn't do Shabbat is missing out. Doing away with this thing for 25 hours, except for when you're Minister of Defense, which is a 24-hour, but it's just such a gift, especially in these days. So, I think what's right for Gilat and I is also right for the state of Israel. At the end of the day, if we respect each other, we can work everything out. And if we fight or foment hate, nothing will work. So it's all a matter of mindset. And ignore the politicians. The Israeli people, by and large, are just great people. I am so darn happy. I was born in Israel, and my parents made that huge decision to make Aliya. You know, they were very secular. They had no connection to Yiddishkeit or anything to that matter. And I feel so fortunate to have grown up here and certainly serve in the army and serve as a defense minister of Israel. And to our folks all around the world, look, I'll tell you as you know, former defense minister and former diaspora minister, we love you, and that's period. It's not dependent on anything. Whatever, whenever, wherever you are now, or 50 years from now, or 200 years from now, we care about every Jew in the world. Mm-hmm. We'd love everyone to make Aliyah. And yeah, am I calling you to make Aliyah? Definitely. Would it be a great decision for you personally? Most probably so. And today, you know, working through Nefesh B'Nefesh and other organizations, you can go through it. If you decide not to make Aliyah, we respect that. There's been a diaspora for 2,700 years now. So
Right.
and we're here for you, and we know you've always been there for us. So we're this big family, the family of the Jewish people, and we're always going to be there for you, regardless of what choices you make. And we hope it's very important for me that Jews continue to be Jewish and ensure their children and grandchildren continue a Jewish way of life, not necessarily an Orthodox or practicing, but a strong Jewish identity, because we've got a meaningful mission in this world to shine, to show what a wonderful Jewish state in very difficult circumstances can do. So anyway, long story short, we love you.
So if that's the home that your children are being raised in, I think I got the answer to my question about the values.
And
Okay.
Eve, I want to thank you. You know, for whoever doesn't know, we've known each other for about 11 years now. She's great. She's just a great ambassador to Israel and a huge Zionist. And thanks, Eve, and thanks all of you. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up.
All right. Member of Knesset, Naftali Bennett, maybe one day minister once again, Naftali Bennett. Thank you so much for your time. I know that this is very special. You did this for One Israel Fund, that you carved out a few minutes for us. And I can't tell you how much all of us appreciate it. We'll be following you and possibly even bugging you with more questions and issues over the next few years. Thanks again, and really,
you go ahead.
All kavod and all the strength to you. Thank you so much. Everybody, that ends our webinar for this evening. Short and to the point, really a privilege. I hope you all realize that, a privilege to have Naftali Bennett with us tonight. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in. And I want to thank One Israel Fund for everything that it is doing constantly to ensure the security, the enhancement of life of Jews in Yudea and Judea and Samaria. Otherwise, it could be that a lot of what we're discussing would be a non-issue. If people weren't living here and feeling good about raising their families here, it wouldn't be the issue that it is today, and how important it is to apply sovereignty and do what we can to keep everybody safe and happy and secure for all of you. For those of us who are already living here, and for those of you who maybe one day will be on the way. So take care, everybody, and thank you so much. This is Eve Harow, Director of Tourism for One Israel Fund. You can write to me, Eve at oneisraelfund.org. Go into our website. You'll see the webinars, including this one, that we have already done, and also some virtual tours that we are putting out to keep people connected to Israel, even during these times where you can't actually get here. And of course, the incredibly important security work that Mark Provisor, our Chief of Security, is constantly doing behind the scenes to keep us out of the headlines, which is really where we want to be. So be well, everyone. We'll have another webinar, hopefully in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned to future developments and just stay well, stay healthy, and hopefully the world will get back to whatever the new normal is. Take care, everybody.